These are three of the most important things to check when buying a used trailer, and conveniently, they're all located in the same general area. In many ways, buying a used trailer is similar to investing in the stock market. It can be really tempting when you see the money that other people are making, or in this case, the money that other people are saving. But if you don't know what you're doing, you can waste a lot of money in the long run. I don't want that to happen to you. And so in this video, I'm going to show you three things that you absolutely must check if you're going to buy a used trailer. These are things that I've learned working with thousands of customers in the trailer industry and hearing countless horror stories about trailer purchases gone wrong. Before that though, I do have a bonus tip at the end of the video about buying used trailers, so make sure you stick around for that. Like I said though, all three of these are in the same general location, which is the axle or the surrounding area. And so we're going to start on the outside and work our way in. Number one is the tires, which I realize sounds super obvious, but don't go clicking off the video or clicking forward just yet, because there are a couple of things to look for that may not be quite as obvious. We all know that buying a trailer with bald tires is inevitably going to cost you money because you're going to have to replace them. But the way that why can't I say the word tires? But the way that the tires are worn can actually show problems with the trailer itself. And so here are a couple of things to look out for. Number one is if the tire is wearing on the inside or the outside. If you find this on a trailer, it almost certainly means that the axle is bent. There are some other potential causes, but if I had to guess, I'd say something like 90% of the time, it's a bent axle. In the bonus tip, I am going to share with you kind of what to do if you find something like this while you're looking at the trailer, but suffice it to say for now, a bent axle is not a good thing. The other thing to watch out for with tires is if there's any wear on the sidewalls. This is just caused by running your trailer without enough air in the tires, so it is fairly common to see. Now, I'm not a trailer tire expert, and so some of you who know a little bit more about tires may need to jump down in the comments and give a little bit more in-depth knowledge about them. My fairly simplistic understanding of it, though, is that the issue is not just wear on the outside of the sidewalls, but it's also that whenever you run your tires without enough air in them, those sidewalls will heat up significantly more due to the extra friction of the tire. Yep, I give up. But that extra surface space that's touching the road causes the sidewalls to heat up significantly more than they normally would. Therefore, you can find problems not just on the outside and not just on the inside behind the axle, but there can actually be problems inside the tire itself. Before I get to the second thing though, it's my goal to help people make more informed trailer purchases. And so if that's something you need, make sure to subscribe. Also, if you already know a lot about trailers, go ahead and subscribe anyway and hop down in the comments and help some people down there. I currently work in the trailer industry, and so while I do know a lot about trailers, I think I've already proven that there's definitely things out there that I don't know as well, such as trailer tires. You know a lot about trailer tires. Way too much, honestly. The second thing you should check for whenever you're looking at buying a used trailer is the axle bearings. And if you don't know what that means or even what axle bearings are, that's totally okay. I didn't either until I started working with trailers every day. To make it quick and easy, axle bearings let your wheels turn freely while still bearing the weight of the trailer, as well as keeping your wheels aligned properly. To do this, they need a lot of grease. As you can imagine, it doesn't take much to stop these things from working. I actually had a customer just recently whose bearings failed on one of his axles, and he sent me a video that serves as a perfect example for how to check the bearings. So he's got the trailer jacked up in the air, but you don't actually have to do that. You can do this first part just as easy with it sitting on the ground. All you've got to do is grab the top of the tire and try to wiggle it back and forth. In a perfect world, the wheel shouldn't move at all. Of course, as we all know, nothing's perfect, but you still shouldn't have much wiggle, if any. If you do, you need new bearings. They do something else in this video as well that is also a good way of getting an idea of the condition of your bearings, which is spinning the tire. This does require it to be jacked up, of course, but it does make it pretty obvious, especially if the tires have a little bit of wiggle, but you're not 100% sure if it's actually the bearings. You can clearly hear the difference in this video, and when you're spinning it by hand like that, you can feel the difference as well. When you spin the tire by hand, you really shouldn't feel much resistance at all. The problem with this method is that, again, nothing's perfect, and it's actually pretty common, even on new trailers, for the hubs to be seized up just a little bit. Most of the time, this is just due to the trailer having not been pulled in a while or not been pulled very far. And so usually once you get going down the road with it, they're going to break in a little bit and it's going to be much better. So you kind of just have to use these two things together. And you can also check the grease as well. If the grease looks like that and the tire wiggles a little bit, there's probably a good chance that the bearings need to be changed out. Before I get to number 3, don't forget about the bonus tip at the end, where I'm going to briefly go into what to do if you run into one of these issues. And also, I live in the South, and so our heat indexes are getting up above 100 degrees. And so I'm definitely looking for some video ideas to do inside. And so if you have any ideas or if you have any questions or anything, drop them below. I may end up doing like a Q&A type of video or something like that at some point. The third thing is going to be the axle parts themselves. And on most trailers, this is probably going to be the most complicated part of the entire trailer. And to be honest, it's really not very complicated at all. There's basically 3 things you need to check on the axles, assuming that they're leaf spring axles. If they're torsion, they basically just need to be straight, but most trailers are going to be leaf springs. So the first thing you need to check is the springs themselves. Depending on the axle, these could be bigger or smaller or have more or less layers, etc. But the main thing is to just make sure they aren't cracked or missing bolts or anything like that. Once you know what they're supposed to look like, you should be able to tell if there's anything wrong with them. So don't overthink it. Just make sure that there's nothing obviously wrong. The second thing is the hangers, and it's pretty much going to be the same way. As long as they're bolted up properly and they aren't bent, broken, or cracked, there's most likely no need to worry. You may want to test the nuts with your fingers just to make sure they're tight, but if you can't twist them off with your fingers, they're most likely fine. The third thing to check is the axle itself, and it does require getting under the ground To be honest with you, it seems like, at least in my experience, most people don't know how to check to see if a trailer axle is bent or not. But it's not particularly hard. It does require getting under the trailer most of the time, although that's not always the case. But you actually do have to know what to look for and what the trailer axle is supposed to look like in order to know if there's anything wrong with it. So most people that I talk to think that the axles are supposed to be completely straight, and that's not actually the case. Trailer axles actually come straight from the factory with a slight upward bend. This is for strength, but it's also a really good way to tell if a trailer's been overloaded. So if you see this upward bend in your axle, you're probably good to go. However, if your axle is flat or even worse, bent downwards, you have a problem. But if you find one of these things during your investigation, do you run for the hills or do something else? That's what the bonus tip is all about. But before I get there, I do have a question for you. Why haven't you subscribed yet? Seriously, if you haven't subscribed yet, let me know why down in the comments, and that way I can make my videos better next time. So the bonus is kind of in 2 parts. 1, don't be afraid to negotiate on price. But 2, know what you're actually capable of fixing. I say this because none of these things necessarily mean that the trailer is destined for the scrap pile. However, all of these things will require a significant amount of time or money or both. If you know how to replace some of these things, though, you can get a really good deal on a trailer with some very fixable issues. But you will have to make sure to purchase the trailer at a price that's actually going to cover those things. Truth be told, most of these things are pretty easy to fix and are probably worth knowing how to, even if you never run into any of these issues. If you'd be interested in a video on how to replace hangers or bearings or axles or anything else, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.